Hello, I'm Tyler Coates, and I'm your host today for Half Hour with Poker Face. And I'm thrilled to be joined by the showrunner of season two of the Peacock comedy series, Tony Tost. Welcome, Tony.
Thanks, Tyler. Great to be here.
Thank you. It's great to be here with you. And we always like to start these conversations off by having the guests kind of give a quick overview of the series they're talking about. So, Tony, what can you tell us about Poker Face, in particular, season two?
Yeah, I mean, Poker Face season two picks up the elements that hopefully people enjoyed on season one. It's a kind of an old school classic TV mystery of the week show where we follow Charlie Cale, played by Natasha Lyonne, as she's on the road and finds herself in a new town with a new murder that she finds herself inexplicably drawn into.
Yeah.
And she's got this special ability where she knows when people are lying, which is both a bit of a gift and a curse for her.
Absolutely. Well, before we go any further, let's take a look at the trailer for
Sure.
season two, Poker Face.
I got this thing. I can tell when someone's lying. It's kind of a thing I do. So, who are you?
I am Felicity Price.
Nope. Try again.
I am.
Both.
Who even are you? You're one of my favorites.
Maybe. I'm figuring out how to finally start enjoying this journey, you know? Look me in the eye and tell me that you didn't kill her. That little demon sabotaged Elijah's magic trick.
I just want someone to like me.
Bullshoot. Something is amiss.
I want to know everything there is to know about you.
Oh, gosh, you don't mean that, but flattered nonetheless.
This car, she's a beauty.
No business like show business, huh?
I'm a professional. I lie for a living, and your gift is uncanny. I've never seen anything like it.
No one's fooled me yet.
I'm gonna be the first.
Sorry, but I think I might be foolproof.
Game on, Charlie Cale.
All right. I love the first season of the show. I'm so excited for season two. And typically, when a show comes back for a second season, you have a full ensemble of actors who are also returning with it, which is not really the case for this show because, as you said, it's a mystery of the week, and Natasha Lyonne as Charlie Cale is kind of really the main character who returns. So very curious, does that present new challenges for a writer's room when you don't have, the actors in mind and you can't write for them, kind of write characters tailored for them in a second season?
Yeah, I mean, I would say it definitely presents challenges, maybe more of a challenge than not having the roles cast
Mm,
is just each episode you have to kind of start over from scratch, other than Charlie, obviously, and,
right.
Natasha as Charlie is the through line, and the genre and the kind of the Hal Catch'em template is the through line. But really, you have to start all over again, introducing a world, the characters, the relationships, and all the dynamics, and that you're just going to kind of do that for 40 to 55 minutes, and then the next episode you got to do it all over again. So in a way, it's not like you don't kind of like end on a cliffhanger and pick it back up with already a set number of dynamics and recurring casts and stuff. So that is a challenge, but that's also kind of my favorite thing about it is that you get it is a little movie each week, and you get to like invent a new world, and you don't like some shows you watch and you're just like, oh yeah, they're stuck with this this character for like 5 seasons or whatever, and it's kind of a drag, but they got to service that character. There's none of that here. It's kind of like we've got Charlie, and then we just invent new characters, and sometimes from the coming in on season two, with season one, I think being well received, and we did have some actors in mind that we knew that we'd be writing towards that are either had reached out to Natasha or Ryan or were friends with them that we thought like we might have a chance to get, like when Wyatt Kane, who wrote 203, the third episode, this FBI story, he pitched a John Mulaney type, and that was, he's a fan of John Mulaney, but also like we're not ignorant that like Natasha's buddies with John Mulaney, and so we wrote towards that. If John was like not interested or not available, then yeah, then we look for someone else, and we either tweak the character or we figure out something else. So sometimes we actually did write towards performers even though they weren't cast, and then other times we just kind of would base it on somebody we knew or some type, or playing with some archetype that we wanted to undercut or subvert in some way, or find some surprise in.
Yeah, that was actually a question I was gonna come up with in a couple minutes, but I'll start with now. Obviously season one had this incredible roster of guest performers, and Judith Light even won an Emmy for her performance. And it feels like this is it's a great opportunity for an actor who just like wants to jump in and do something really fun and juicy like this. And so obviously John Mulaney was on your mind. Were there any other actors that you had heard were really really eager to be on the show that you were thinking about when you were writing, or did you have like a wish list of
Yeah,
performers?
I mean, we definitely had a wish list. Like the first day in the writers' room, when I had the writers introduce themselves so we could all get to know each other, I asked everyone to, like, at the end of your introduction, give us like your dream guest star for season two. Like we had a literal running dream list of just actors we're friends with, or that we'd worked with, or that we were friendly with, and so that would always be kind of hovering in the background, or sometimes you'd come up with a character while breaking, and then you go back to that list. Guest stars is like a chance to do something they haven't done before. Like, I know like Kumail was very excited to come in and play this Florida cop. That's not a role that's offered coming his way tons, so he was able to do something that he normally wouldn't be able to do. And then he's hilarious and weirdly touching in this kind of oddball role, and so like that's, I think that's something that we tried to lean into, is like, come play with us, come hang out with us for a couple weeks, and you should have fun. You'll be on set with Natasha, and then you might have we'll try to give you something that you don't often get to play.
Yeah, I love that. Before we look at a clip from season two, one more question to ask you. I think what's interesting about Poker Face, the first season came out, it was 2023, right? So there's been a bit of delay. I think it's interesting because it kind of started a trend of a return to the kind of case of the week procedural, centered around women, especially
Yeah.
solving these intricate mysteries in idiosyncratic ways. I'm very curious, like, what about the concept kind of as a whole do you think really brings viewers in? And I think, we now have multiple examples of this kind of trend. Like, what about it do you think is exciting for people?
I mean, I think it's exciting because it's not necessarily exciting, which is weird. Like it's a comfort food template in a way.
Right.
It's something that TV does very well. It's like you come and hang out with a lead character, lead actor, performer who you like. So you have to have, your James Garner, your Peter Falk, your Natasha Lyonne as the center, that you want to hang out with, and you want to see them basically solve an interesting mystery, but maybe even more important, see them bounce off of interesting characters in an interesting new environment. And I think that's kind of the draw. And it's the idea that like, like we have real emotions and stuff, but we're not swinging for, like, we're not like, okay, this is going to be our award-winning episode where we tackle, the opioid crisis in America. Like that other shows do that. Like we're kind of trying to just update this old school kind of TV thing, not like TV as a 10-hour movie type of thing. We're trying to, this thing that TV does really well, but just because it does it very well and has done it historically, doesn't mean you can't make it fresh and new and kind of artistically interesting. Like within that sandbox, you can do a lot of interesting filmmaking, character work. You can get some interesting performances in there by embracing that format. So I think, yeah, I know. I think TV is healthy when it offers an array of different types of pleasures, And so I'm glad that there's a succession. I mean, was out there, and like one of my favorite shows, Reservation Dogs, and stuff like that. But then there's also this kind of old school thing, this version of a show that was more popular in the 70s and 80s that we kind of got away from, but which, again, if done well, it's just rewarding to know that you click on an episode, you don't know exactly what you're going to get in Poker Face, but you know you're going to get a really charismatic Natasha Lyonne performance, and you're going to be told a pretty good mystery, and like there's something rewarding in that, I think.
Absolutely. Well, let's take a look at a clip from the season premiere of Poker Face. This is titled "The Game Is Afoot."
Yes.
Oh, so what exactly do you want?
Oh, well, look, it's no big deal, but at least like 60% of what your secret sister out there is saying is like total bullshit.
How could you know that?
Well, just now when you said you were cold, that was a lie, right?
Maybe. Yes.
Yeah, well, anyway, I got this thing I can just tell when someone's lying. It's kind of a thing I do. This'll be fun. Okay. Tell me a fact about yourself, but don't dig too deep.
You're freaking me out.
True. Let's up the ante. Why don't you grab one of these spangly buddies from the peanut gallery? I'll turn my back, and you tell me what you have.
Squirrel.
Bullshit.
Elephant.
Bullshit.
Hammer.
True. Although not technically a spangly buddy, actually, so kind of a weird move. Anyway, you see my point. Believe me now?
How exactly does it work?
Well, I'm not exactly sure, but it's not really the point.
I think that scene kind of sets up perfectly my next question, which is, this is a case of the week crime hour-long series, but it's technically designated as a comedy, and it's a very funny show. So very curious, like, do you consider genre and do you consider it a comedy when you're crafting a season? And how do you maintain that while you're also kind of writing about very dark and devious events?
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit of a tightrope walk. Like when we're first conceiving breaking an episode, it is very much we start either with the subculture that we're in, the world that we're in, and the murder and the characters and a reason for one character to kill another in this world, and like that, and you could play that straight. But so we're trying to figure out the structure, the math of that murder, and then Charlie's entrance into it, and so it's always like trying to find just a little bit of the askew way. Like I found the best Poker Face deaths or murders to solve are almost sound like punchlines.
Right.
Like episode 204. A cop gets eaten by its alligator partner. Something like almost absurd, funny, bizarre in the conception of the murder and in the approach of it. But while we're doing all that, we're also pretty militant. And this comes from Ryan, and which I try to carry, in the day-to-day grind of it. Is like, but we play the characters straight and we play the emotions straight. Like the characters are funny, hopefully. But they're, they need to have real motivations. They need to have real emotions, real psychologies. But we're always just trying to find like, how do we turn something a little bit on their head and what we can do to make that, surprising. So it takes a lot of work, because you want the mystery to work formally as a mystery and to be satisfying and to be, and have the closer that a murder is to a seemingly perfect crime, the better it is and more satisfying it is to see Charlie actually figure it out. But then it's also like, how do we make it funny? How do we Yeah, and a lot of that is just, we have some really funny writers in the writers' room, like and Ryan himself has a really great sense of humor. And then, then Natasha comes in on the Charlie, and she can make the most throwaway line or a scene like the one that we just saw, which is in and of itself, I think the funniest thing about it is just her with that big old ham hock in her hand that she's chewing away with it, the whole time, and that's Natasha. That's what, take a scene that could very easily be just a shoe leather type of exposition scene, and it becomes memorable because of what she's doing. And so like it can come in from all different ways, but we're always kind of trying to hit that tone that the show established in season one, and but to find new versions of that.
Yeah. In terms of tone, I know that, when you have different directors come in for each episode, I've read that like they really have a hand in kind of determining what the tone of that particular episode are. So I'm very curious, how does the director coming in, work with you to figure out, how to bring the script alive, basically, and
Yeah,
maintain
yeah.
stuff that you've, I guess, maybe probably stressed over a lot in the writer's room.
Yeah, yeah. When directors come in, we, try to like really prep them on in terms of, like we will walk through, just classic tone meetings where you go scene by scene. Here's the intention of this. Here's where we see the humor, yeah, and or all that type of thing. You basically you just want to like just give information. And then for me, in a lot of ways, it's like kind of hands off because you want to see what the director brings to it and what they do with it. If nothing else, sometimes it'll be a note. If I have a note on set performance wise, it's like maybe we're straining for a laugh here. Let's play it more straight and it'll actually play funnier. That's often the case here, and it's the absurdity of the situation or it's just the recognition of that. And so then that gives the director a chance to have some ownership to make some discoveries, and then it's then in the edit where you kind of fine tune and you pick and choose what moments, what discoveries to keep, which ones to highlight, which ones to maybe don't quite fit in. So I don't know, the different it's this like snowball thing where you start with this idea and you kind of have a choice. You either like put your arms around it and push everyone away and to protect it, or you just kind of say, here's this thing that we wrote, here's everything that we had in mind and thoughts and stuff. Let's see what you do with it, and then 8, 9 times out of 10, they bring in something in the spirit of the show, and that does that. And then if it's a little bit off, then you try to do a little bit of course correction.
Natasha's the star of the show, but Charlie is sort of the supporting player in every episode.
Yeah.
She doesn't show up until that episode, until I think 17 minutes in, because obviously we have to be introduced to the other characters. We have to see the murder happen. Is there kind of like a guardrail in mind of how much of it to show before we get to Natasha kind of coming in, or is it different every single time?
No, I mean when we're breaking it, we have a little bit of a loose, like, okay, we have act one, act two, act three, act four. Like act one, we see the murder. We meet these people. We see why one person wants to kill another. We basically, we don't hide anything. Act two, we see what Charlie's doing in this world and how she connects to these people, and we catch up with the murder. Then act three, basically, we get Charlie, who is not a cop, not a detective, somehow emotionally, psychologically invested in this death, and get her to a certain point where, if she hasn't figured it out by now, she's on the verge of it. And then act four, what's she gonna do about it? So like there's this that's a general shape. We don't have a strict like page length thing. It's just like, well, how much time and space and attention do we need to tell this little mini story in act one, and how long can it sustain itself before we start kind of getting that itch of like, okay, I'm about ready for Charlie to show up now. And so that's, sometimes that act one is, if it's a simpler case, or if there's not too many twists and turns, it's a shorter one. But if something like episode 202 with Giancarlo and Katie Holmes, there's a little bit more of a elaborate story to tell, and the cover up is a little bit, you have to establish the film crew and stuff to establish how he's going to to cover it up, and you have to, establish his motivation and to buy that he would do this. There's another episode, episode 5, in a minor league baseball team. This similarly, the first act, you got to get there's some twists in there, and there's some surprises, and there's some groundwork you have to lay before you actually get to the murder. And then there's other ones where it's a little simpler.
Yeah. You mentioned Peter Falk and James Garner, and I think of Columbo and the Rockford Files, right? As two very like specific inspirations for the show. But I've also read for season 2, you gave your writers kind of a list of other titles of things that you wanted them to either revisit or watch for the first time. I think The Long Goodbye was on there. I'm curious, like, what other titles were really important to you in figuring out, what you could do this season, and if there were specific moments where you wanted to pay homage to those.
Definitely. I mean, I think one thing that Ryan, Natasha, and myself share is that pretty genuine film buffs. Like, it's and like digging, in particular, 1970s filmmaking is like a very fertile ground. This is probably part of the reason why I was lucky enough to get this gig. And like, so Ryan, created the show, in tandem with, Natasha, built around her, and I think that was that Long Goodbye, or that Altman-esque, like in California Split, like that was there from the get-go. And so like in season 2 coming in as showrunner, and with a lot of new writers, like, I think the first thing that there's a screening room in the Poker Face headquarters, and so we all watched The Long Goodbye together. Elliot Gould one, and just to kind of as a tuning mechanism, just to kind of like, because there's this what I call this shagginess to it. It's not a well-oiled machine necessarily. There's a good mystery there, and but it's as much the moment, it's the offbeat moments as much as the plot points that get you coming back to it. It's these little asides, or these little character moments, or these little reveals. And so like wanted to imprint that in everyone's brains. And then we would watch specific episodes of Columbo, just as again, like, just like, this is the tradition, we're not, this is the tradition we're working in, and these are the kind of pleasures we're trying to bring to a TV viewing audience in 2025 version of the pleasures that are to be found there. I would have different movies running silently in the writer's room, just so I could reference to, like, for the episode 2 that Natasha directed, we'd have Hitchcock's Rebecca playing, because we wanted, just like, you don't know what, you hope people are film literate, but like not everyone's seen Rebecca or knows what we mean by Gothic. If we talk about like an American, like a Gothic kind of story, and it's just like, no, like this is the kind of imagery we're thinking about. This is the kind of vibe, and this kind of shadowed, severe kind of, but like an American version of it, and so that's. So that informs a lot of things. Or we have an episode later in the season set at a weightlifting gym, and there's this odd movie Bob Rafelson directed, starring Jeff Bridges and a very young Arnold Schwarzenegger, called Stay Hungry.
Yeah,
so
I love that
we
movie.
so we'd screen scenes from that, and just get inspiration of, but just also like we're not gonna like directly rip this off, but like there's almost this freedom within these kind of popcorn stories to have moments of strangeness. Like, my favorite thing in Stay Hungry, which we didn't do in our episode, but it's like there's this chase of all these oiled up bodybuilders running, through the streets of like Birmingham, Alabama, and then they suddenly stop and start posing in front of like gawkers and stuff, and there's just all these oiled up bodybuilders in the middle of the street, and it's just a wonderful kind of freedom that some of these films had, that we wanted to kind of like, so we could point to, like, let's find our version of that kind of surprise, but that it's less like big plot twists, and it's more like a character doing something that's unexpected.
Absolutely. Well, I always recommend this show to everyone, but I always say, unlike other shows, this is a great show that you can just drop in, watch an episode just to try it out. If you see a guest star that's in it that you like, go ahead and see it, and if you like it, watch the rest. So with that in mind, as kind of like a wrap-up question, I'm very curious if there's, if you met someone who hadn't yet seen Poker Face, is there what's something that you would tell them, like one thing that sticks out about the show that could maybe convince them to give it a try?
Well, I mean, I would lead with like, Natasha Lyonne knows when somebody's lying and she's going to solve a murder, in some strange pocket of America. Like to me, like that, at least to me, like I'm in,
That's a good sales pitch, I have to say.
and that, and she's going to be facing off against a really interesting performer that you probably love and playing a role that you haven't seen him play before. Never see. I don't think John Mulaney's ever played an FBI agent before. And he's does in our show, and he's Natasha's nemesis. And so it's fun to see that. And so like I think that's part of the fun of it. But yeah, where I would say like check out from season 1 the Judith Light episode, You're the Monkey. Like that's to me like that's the show at its best. Or I think 201, the Cynthia Revo episode, I think is a very strong episode that, I was like, if you dig that, we're not going to do that exact same thing again, but that's the kind of thing that the show can do. Or we have an elementary school episode this season that I think is pretty delightful, and so like, let's see Natasha Lyonne as Charlie solve the murder of the class gerbil. Like that's like, who doesn't want to see that?
I love that. Well, thank you again to Tony Tost and our friends at Peacock for joining us today. And everyone watching, thank you for joining us today for Half Hour With.
Awesome. Thanks, Tyler. Enjoyed it.
Thank you so much.